اخوتي ومرحبا بكم في فيديو جديد. هذا الفيديو عندنا واحد الحوار ما بين جوج ديال الناس تحت العنوان لماذا يخلق الله الامراض او لا الشر او لا شي حاجه اللي خايبه. ما غاديش نزيد نطول عليكم في المقدمه بزاف، نتفرجوا جميع في الفيديو ونشوفوا شنو الافكار اللي كتناقش خلال هذا الحوار هذا. نبداو على بركه الله.
But we know that the consequence is going to pass on to the baby.
But that is wrong. That is not just.
Wait. You can't just say, oh, because the child suffers, doesn't. The child is made to suffer because of the actions of someone else.
Does that sound just?
For example,
does a child suffering because of someone else's actions without any consent? The child does not consent. The child has no decision in that. The child did not say, "Mother, can you drink alcohol?" No, because it was in the womb.
Just relax.
Why is a child being punished like that? Why is a child being treated in such an awful manner because of another person's actions? That is not just. Justice.
Did you consent to global warming? Did you
دونك اول ملاحظه عندي هو ان هذا السيد المهم هذا مول الكاسكيط راه هو المسلم، هو اللي كيحاول يدافع على الله سبحانه وتعالى، والاخر يمكن ملحد وكيقول له علاش الله زعما خلى الشر يكون في هذا العالم. فعلى حسب ما لا كنلاحظ كيهضر هذا السيد كيهضر عاطفيا بزاف، ما كيهضرش كاع بعقله. هو الجواب على هذا السؤال شي حاجه اللي بسيطه بزاف. هو الله سبحانه وتعالى عطانا حريه الاختيار وخلانا حنا نختار واش نديروا الشر ولا نديروا الخير. الا درنا الخير غادي نتجازاو، الا درنا الشر غادي نتعاقبوا.
Greenhouse gas emissions.
Nope.
By me, yes, I did. By
What is
these clothes,
what is consent?
I purchased these
Let's
clothes
understand
brand new,
from the
and
very
therefore
root
I contributed to greenhouse gas emissions.
What is consent?
By using oil, I contribute to greenhouse gas emissions.
دابا فهمت. قال له انا كيوقعوا لي مثلا شي حوايج اللي انا ما موافقش عليهم، بحال دابا مثلا الدري الصغير الا كانت امو كتشرب بزاف، الدري الصغير غادي يتاذى. الدري الصغير ما موافقش على ان امو تشرب باش هو يتاذى، يعني الدري الصغير ما عنده حتى شي ذنب، ما دار حتى شي حاجه باش يتاذى، ولكن شكون اللي كيتحمل المسؤوليه هنا؟ الام ديالو هي اللي كتحمل المسؤوليه. فاحنا ما يمكنش نتحملوا الافعال ديال وحدين اخرين، ولكن عايشين في واحد السيستم ككل. والله سبحانه وتعالى هو العادل، هو اللي غادي يقدر يحكم بيناتنا في اخر المطاف، واللي غادي يعرف شكون دار المزيان وشكون دار الخيب.
I am consenting because I am part of that action.
What is consent?
When it comes to cancer, I'm not consenting
Sorry.
to that. I'm not consenting to cancer, but I don't have a choice because I live as in a...
Look at that. I don't have a choice. That's the difference between consent and not having a choice.
But no one here thinks cancer
you
is
got
just.
it finally.
No one here.
Sorry.
Okay, anyone watching who thinks cancer is just. No.
دابا هنا قال لي واش وافقتي زعما على هذه المشاكل اللي كنعيشوا اللي منها مثلا التغير ديال المناخ والاحتباس الحراري وداك الشيء؟ جاوبه هو قال لي انا مشارك حيت اختاريت انني نركب في التران ونمشي وداك الشيء. ولكن هو راه تزاد في المجتمع ديال اصلا بحال هكا، هو اصلا تزاد في وسط الاحتباس الحراري، يعني هو اصلا ما موافقش.
No one thinks cancer is just.
You know what you're doing? You're shifting the discussion. Instead of now talking about
غادي يبدا يناقش معاه زعما التعريف ديال الكلمه، وهذه هي اللي فيه حتى انا هذه القاعده. في اي موضوع كنكون كنناقش مع شي واحد صاحبي او شي واحد اللي كنعرفو بحال هكا، كنلاحظ ان بنادم كيبقى يستعمل مصطلحات بلا ما يكون عارف المعنى ديال دوك المصطلحات اللي كيتستعمل. كيبدا يستعمل مصطلحات غير هكا، ملي كتسولو شنو كتعني هذه الكلمه بالضبط ما كيعرفش يجاوبك. ولكن هذه حاجه رئيسيه، ما عمرك ما تناقش مع شي واحد قبل ما تثبت المصطلح اشنو كيعني.
consent, you're now going to justice. Let's understand consent first. All of the things that you mentioned, ultimately what you're admitting now, I had no choice. I have been forced to live in a system like that. So you did not consent to it, you forced onto it.
I did not consent to the ability for me to get cancer. But here's the thing.
Sorry.
I was born
I'm not
as an
talking about
organic
cancer.
organism. I was born as an organic
I don't
organism.
see why.
And that's how we know evolution is real. Because it doesn't work very well. It works
The
reasonably well,
harmful-
but we have issues
The
with it because
harmful
it's come from different things.
rays that comes from the sun or from our universe up
But I'm
there.
not saying that's just. I'm saying that is not just.
Sorry. You can't just make it into a just thing only without looking at the system. So now you have ozone layer being hole created in it.
باش يعيش اصلا هو في هذا السيستم كما قلت لكم قبيله. غير هو الاشاره لواحد النقطه، هذا السيد هذا كيتحدث عاطفيا، والصعيب بزاف انك تحدث مع شي واحد اللي كيستخدم العاطفه ديالو في الحوار وتحدث معاه انت بعقلك وتوصل له الفكره. صعيب بزاف.
And harmful.
Human action.
It's the humans doing it, of course. Did you consent to that? Did I consent to it? No, I didn't. I was forced into it. I had
But
no...
collectively we
Sorry,
did.
sorry,
That collective
sorry.
action of using
Sorry,
aerosols.
now you are now totally changing the meaning of the word consent. So now, for example, if a woman is raped because man overpowered her and she had no choice,
That's not the case.
excuse me, let's understand consent. If a woman is being raped by various pervert individuals and they overpower her and she has no choice into that because she's been forced, is that her passive consent to this?
That's not consent.
Is this a passive
She is
consent?
not consenting.
Is this a passive consent, not an active one? Is this a passive
No,
consent?
it's not.
Good. So if I am being bombarded with all this harmful rays,
حيتاش هادوما الحوار مع شي واحد اللي كيتحدث بالعاطفه تيكون ديما بحال هكا، ديما كيبقى يتنقل لك من الموضوع حيتاش العاطفه ديالو هي اللي كتقيدو كما كنقولوا، هي اللي كتقول ليه اشنو يقول، ماشي العقل ديالو. ما تقدرش يبقى معاك في موضوع واحد حتى يكمل داك الموضوع، عندك الساعه دوزو لموضوع واحد اخر.
and pollutions all over, am I consenting to this?
Okay, so
Or am I being forced into it?
when we think of consent,
Do I have a choice or am I consenting?
can I talk?
That's the whole idea.
Okay. When we consider consent, it generally involves multiple people who have the ability to make decisions. We do not consider consent in the circumstances where people don't have the decision process. They don't have control over that. There is no responsibility. When we have consent, there is responsibility and there are consequences to our actions. That is what consent is. That's what we're involved in when it comes to consenting. Yeah? So, whereas someone can consent to sex, we don't consent to a catastrophic climate event. We don't consent to that. However, collectively, for certain catastrophic events, collectively, we have knowingly contributed to that. That is just how the world
There's a huge
works.
difference between knowingly being part of the system and actively consenting it.
I've got to take a phone call. It just keeps coming through.
You have to be a little bit away if you're going to speak because all cameras going to... Yeah, that's fine. Right. So, what we're saying is,
فراه هذه هي الحياه وهذه هي اننا حنا عندنا حريه الاختيار. كما قلت لكم نقدر نختار ندير الخايب، نقدر نختار ندير الزوين. اختارت ندير الزوين راه غيكون عنده تاثيرات بزاف على ناس وحدين اخرين بزاف. اختاريت ندير الخايب راه غيكون عنده عاوتاني على تاثيرات بزاف. مثلا انا قتلت شي واحد، داك السيد عنده ولده صغير خرج تشرد حتى هو خرج قتال، خرج شفار، فانا ساهمت في واحد المشكل في المجتمع. هذاك الدري غنقولوا شنو الذنب ديالو، غادي نبقاو غاديين هكا في الاسئله. داكشي علاش غنقول لكم الله سبحانه وتعالى هو الوحيد اللي قادر باش يحكم بالعدل، هو اللي قادر بوحدو يقول العدل اشنا هو.
we haven't consented for any of this. We had no choice. The baby didn't consent to it. If the baby had the power to consent, I'm sure the baby will say, don't drink alcohol, mom, because it's going to harm me.
I agree.
But the baby isn't consenting because
100%,
firstly,
we're in agreement. The baby does
so,
not consent.
So don't bring now the whole thing about the baby.
ايه ولكن انت ما كانش عندك اختيار اصلا في الاول باش انك تعيش فيها ولا ما تعيش فيها، وما عندكش اختيار حتى دابا.
You do an action and the consequences of your action are felt upon yourself. That is a just system, yeah?
Exactly.
Where you consent, you're consenting to something. I say, if I'm going to go up to someone and swear in their face, I am consenting to their response, whatever that be, because I've taken that action and I'm responsible for whatever they do.
You love
because
to
I've
read.
caused that reaction. A baby has not done that. A baby who was born to a mother had no control over that.
That's what we're saying.
And that is not just. Would a God, someone who's kind, someone who's compassionate, would they create a system where someone who has no choice, who has no ability to consent, who has no responsibility for their actions, should feel a serious consequence of
Let's go back to the system.
Well, I would say no, that is not a just system.
Okay, let's understand justice.
Unfair
Let's
system.
justice. If there is no unjust action, would you understand what just is? If there is no suffering and pain and evil, would you know what good and happiness and bliss and enjoyment is? Would you?
Is God all powerful?
Sorry. Don't now jump to justice.
To answer your question,
No.
You asked me, do I need relativity to know something?
Firstly, if there was no darkness whatsoever, would you know what light is? Would you even appreciate what light is? Would you? If there was no pain whatsoever, would you not appreciate why
داكشي علاش كاين اصلا يوم الحساب،
joy is? Would you?
غير باش كل واحد يتخلص وياخذ داكشي اللي دار.
Or if you only respond to the question that I ask.
And to do that, I need to ask you another question.
No, you answer the way you like rather than asking me another
Okay,
question.
alright then, that's fair enough. Okay,
إلا ما كانش الشر في العالم واش غادي نعرفوا شنو هو الخير؟ إلا ما كانش الظلام في العالم واش غادي نعرفوا شنو هو الضوء؟ إلا ما كانش الحزن في العالم واش غنعرفوا شنو هي السعادة؟
I would argue that if I believed in a God, and I believe this, I could be wrong here, but Islamic God, is he all powerful? I think he is, and therefore, if he is all powerful, if he can do whatever he wants, well, I'm assuming it's gender there. If they can do whatever they want, then I'm sure they could create a system where you do not need relativity to understand something. I don't think it's a big deal, but we live in this system, and therefore.
You've answered your own question. Perhaps you haven't realized this. If a creator is all powerful, is the creator able to create with his wisdom systems where people have this relativity to understand and appreciate more?
We do not need to suffer.
No, it's not. You don't need to
God
suffer.
should be able to. If he's all powerful, he should be able
The
to.
creator doesn't want you to
where
suffer.
Suffering doesn't exist.
No.
I'm sorry, but that's simply the fact.
No.
But here's the thing: because we live in a natural universe that is not created by some individual, because it's a reaction and over time, over millennium, little things have big impacts.
Do you want
we have
the
this weird
creator?
system which doesn't always
Okay,
work.
let
This
me-
is why we
let me
have
give you-
tailbones.
let me
We have
give you-
tailbones because we evolved from a monkey with a tail.
Oh, now
That's
you're
why
bringing
we have a
evolution in.
tailbone, because it doesn't work. If there was a God, he would have created a system where we wouldn't have tailbones, and therefore we wouldn't have
Firstly,
issues.
now you're
That's why we
resorting
wouldn't have
to
appendicitis. because
evolution.
We need an appendix. We don't use an appendix. An appendix is a leftover from an evolutionary forefather of us. If a
You know
God,
why?
if a God
Do you
was
know-
created
do
that,
you know
we
why
wouldn't
I'm
need to have an
surprised?
appendix.
I work in a hospital.
Okay, that's cool.
Right? Do you know what an appendix does to our body?
There is
You just made a statement. It's a vestigial organ. Now that was
it
the
has
belief.
no role.
That was the belief.
It has no role.
That was the belief about vestigial organs.
Yep.
Like in the Middle Ages, that's how far. I'm not saying Middle Ages in the 14th century, in the early 19th century. They had a list of vestigial organs.
Okay, yeah.
I encourage strongly to everyone who's listening to go and research about vestigial organs, starting from the very first list that was created or generated in the early 19th century. And look at the list. Is the list of vestigial organs means redundant organs in your body?
انتقل عاوتاني لموضوع آخر.
In your body that has no purpose. We call them leftover of evolutionary byproducts or whatever, right? Search and do research. Are these lists getting bigger and bigger? Like the more and more part of our body is useless?
اللي ما عرفش علاش كيهضروا هما كيهضروا على الأعضاء الأثرية، حيتاش اللي ما عرفش نظرية التطور، فنظرية التطور كتقول على أن أي نوع، يعني حتى حنا كإنسان فينا واحد البقايا من لي زونسيتر ديالنا، فينا واحد البقايا من داك النوع او الحيوانات اللي حنا تطورنا منه ولينا انسان فينا بقايا منه، وهذوك البقايا حنا فينا وما كنستعملوهاش وما صالحه لحتى شي حاجه، في حين ان هذه الهضره كانت كتقال في القرن 18 وفي القرن 19، ودابا العلم كل مره كيكتشف ان عضو من دوك الاعضاء فعلا عنده واحد الخاصيه وعنده واحد الوظيفه في الجسم ديالنا. يعني العلم هو هذا كيتطور كل مره كنكتشفوا حاجه جديده، وبنادم ديما خصو يدير لا ميزاجور راسو قبل ما يهضر.
Or it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. One thing I can tell you right now, the list is getting smaller and smaller. Why? Because as our science and technology develops, we learn more and more about the function of those things. Appendix was once considered to be a vestigial organ, once considered by our scientists who believed in evolution. But the same scientists will now say, of course, appendix has a major role to play. I am not going to tell you what role is because I want you to do the homework. When I first checked,
فوالا هادشي اللي مشيتي لاحظتي ديك لا ليست اللي كانت بدات في الاول ولا ليست اللي كاينه دابا، فغادي نلاحظوا ان لا ليست كتنقص، يعني ديك الاعداد ديال العدد ديال الاعضاء الاثريه غادا وكتنقص، يعني كل مره كنكتشفوا الوظيفه ديال واحد العضو معين.
decades ago, so it wasn't actually new information, decades ago, in Scientific American, Ask the Experts, because I used to read Scientific American. There's two things, two new science magazines I used to read during the university years. New Scientist and Scientific American. Scientific American had asked the experts, and there someone did pose that question. What is the role of the appendix? More than 2 professional scientists in their field answered that question. What role the appendix plays. So today, you would not find, as far as I know, a biology textbook which has this myth, appendix has no role to play. Right. So this is your answer to about vestigial organs. Coming back, look, in Islam, Allah tells us that ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر. The corruption has occurred in the land and the sea. Why? Because what have their hands have earned. So Allah can, make them feel some of their own chastisement, what they have done with their own hands. Also Allah says that He will test people with something of fear, hunger, loss of life, loss of property, and so on and so forth. So this is part of the wisdom of God creating this life. This life, God, that we believe in, a just God, did not create this as paradise, in which there is no suffering. I can see. I know, but I want to quickly answer this. You will go there. I'm not going to take minutes, maybe a few minutes. This life is not life utopia created by God. It is a transitionary period in which we will be tested in what we believe and what we do.
I understand your position.
And
the thing is,
when we end up in a destination, there will be a place of happiness when there will be no suffering. So God created for this wisdom from God. God has created this
to understand the good and the bad.
Do you know why this good and the bad? At this point, we have been given freedom of choice, free will.
We have been given
free will means some people will use it wisely and some people would not.
100%.
Those who would not, they will create suffering. They will do evil. If they were unable to do evil, then they have no free will. Because of the provision of free will, their suffering does exist.
I do understand your position, and I'll be honest, I have heard it before, and I understand the logic of relativity. I would disagree with that, but obviously I've got to go. But what I think we both share is the fact that we both agreed earlier that we should try and live our lives respecting others, reducing the suffering that our lives have on others. And I think
اصلا هاد الحياه ما يمكنش تكون واحد الحياه مثاليه. علاش؟ حيت حنا ماشي ملائكه، فاحنا مجرد بشر وعندنا حريه الاختيار. كما قلت لكم كنختاروا نقدروا نديروا الحاجه زوينه اولا نختاروا نديروا الحاجه الخايبه. ماشي بحال الملائكه لا يعصون امرا الله سبحانه وتعالى، يعني كيديروا غير الحاجه المزيانه. هذا هو الفرق بيننا وبينهم، وهذا الشيء علاش هاد الحياه ما يمكنش تكون مثاليه، وضروري خص يكون فيها suffering، يعني ضروري خص يكون فيها المعاناه. والمعاناه راه كتخدم للصالح ديالنا، المعاناه راها في الصالح ديال الانسان، والله سبحانه وتعالى عارف شنو خصنا وشنو مزيان لينا وشنو اللي غيخلينا نزيدو لقدام ونطور.
Whether you're Islamic, whether you're vegan, or whether you're even Christian or whatever, as long as
not just animal life, right? Human life too.
I consider us all animals, so I agree. As long as we respect
people
everyone
in Palestine, people in China, people in Kashmir, wherever people are suffering, irrespective of their language, of their color, of their race, of their religion.
We are all individuals who feel emotions, who feel pain, and we all deserve respect for our individualism and our pain and our suffering. And I think if you do that through Islam, and if I do that through veganism, then I would hope that if there is a God, and I know you believe in no God, and if I
wish we could continue, but you have to go.
I understand that, but I think we both have a very similar outlook, but we've come to the same conclusion and a lot of things from a different route. And I think that's really a really beautiful thing of life, that we can come to the same conclusion, but from very different journeys.
It's just a matter of how we take that journey. If you consider Islam and research into it, you will see that all your noble things that you've just said, you will agree that Islam is aspiring and encouraging to do the same.
I'll make you a deal. I'll look into Islam if you look into veganism.
Yeah, I have.
Okay. I assume you use it for a YouTube channel or something, is it?
There are lots of YouTube channels. You can ask them which channels they are.
Okay, because I didn't know if you were part of it or not. But
people just record. You come here and people record it.
Okay. I want to look it up. I want to see.
Okay. You can tell him which channels you're recording to, so he can reflect back.
بالنسبه للدور ديال الزائده الدوديه، فهي اللي كنقول احنا بالدارجه المصرانه الزايده، فعندها واحد الدور كبير في المناعه، بحيث انها كتخدم باش تصفي دوك البكتيريا والفيروسات اللي كتكون داخله على الجسم ديالنا. دونك تتلعب دور مناعاتي. هذا هو الدور ديالها اللي ما كانوش عارفينه الناس شحال هادي، و كلاصاوها على اساس انها عضو اثري وما عنده حتى شي فائده وما عنده حتى شي دور في الجسم ديالنا. المهم كان هذا هو الفيديو. ما تنساوش تخليو لي الراي ديالكم، اللي عندكم شي افكار ولا شي فكره، او واش متفقين ما متفقينش. المهم كاع داكشي اللي كيدور في دماغكم خليوه لي في كومونتير، ديروا جيم الفيديو وبارطاجيوه بزاف باش كلشي يستافد. هذا هو اللي كاين. تهلاو.